Bakshi, Managing Director and CEO of ICICI Bank. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Thank you. Good evening to all of you, and welcome to the ICICI Bank earnings call to discuss the Q1 of 2021 results. Joining us today on this call are Vishakha, Anup, Sandeep Batra, Rakesh, and Anandya. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We hope that all of you are safe, healthy, and doing well. During this period of the COVID-19 pandemic, the healthcare workers, sanitation workers, police, and all the essential service providers have shown utmost resilience in keeping us safe, and their dedication motivates us. As the country has gradually reopened, many Indians have gone back to work, supporting the path of normalization. Team ICICI is thankful to all of them. We also appreciate the efforts of our employees who continue to serve our customers in these unprecedented times. Nearly all our branches and ATMs across the country are functional currently. We have seen a gradual rise in the customer footfalls in our branches in June and the first fortnight of July compared to April and May. Excluding the employees working at the branches and some of the team members from operations and IT, a majority of the employees continue to work from home. Since June, India has seen a resumption of economic activity. Some high-frequency indicators such as electronic and physical toll collections and generation of electronic permits for transportation of goods have shown an improvement and are close to pre-COVID levels. GST collections have increased in June compared to April and May 2020. Indicators such as kharif sowing, water reservoir levels, tractor sales volumes, and sales of fertilizers reflect a relatively stronger rural economy. Of course, the trajectory of the pandemic and the pace and sustenance of the improvement in economic activity needs to be monitored carefully over the next few months. At ICICI Bank, we continue to steadily grow our franchise and maintain a strong balance sheet within our well-defined strategic framework. This framework has the following key elements. Number one, growth in the core operating profit in a risk-calibrated manner through the focused pursuit of target market segments. We were able to take the core operating profit from 189.40 billion rupees in financial year 2018 to 268.08 billion rupees in financial year 2020. The growth in core operating profit improved from 5.7% in financial year 2018 to 21.5% in financial year 2020. In Q1 of 2021, a significant decline in fee income due to the disruption in customer activities was more than offset by robust growth in net interest income and some decline in operating expenses, resulting in a core operating profit of 70.14 billion rupees, which is a 14.8% growth on a year-to-year basis. Excluding the impact of higher interest income on income tax refund in the first quarter last year, the year-on-year core operating profit growth was 18%. Number two, further enhancing our strong deposit franchise. Our business and core operating profit are driven by our deposit franchise. During the quarter, we continued to see robust deposit flows, resulting in high liquidity and a liquidity coverage ratio of 146% for the quarter. Our cost of deposits is amongst the lowest in the system, and during the quarter, we reduced the interest rate offered on savings accounts as well as key retail deposit rate by 50 basis points each. Total deposits increased by 21.3% year-on-year at June 30, 2020. Average savings accounts deposits increased by 14% year-on-year. Average current account deposits increased by 19.8% year-on-year during the quarter, reflecting healthy inflows into current accounts, which we see as a positive indicator of the business health of our customers as well as a result of the growth of our franchise. Our digital platforms and efforts towards process decongestion have played an important role in the growth of our deposit franchise. Number 3, growing our loan portfolio in a granular manner with a focus on risk and reward. We have continued to increase the share of the granular, diversified lending to retail and small business customers in our overall portfolio. Our retail portfolio is largely secured, built based on proprietary data and analytics in addition to bureau checks, and well priced in relation to the risk. Our strong deposit franchise enables us to offer competitive pricing to the selected customer segments. In our corporate portfolio, we have emphasized reduction in concentration risk and improvement in the rating mix of our business. Our approach is to provide a full suite of banking products to corporate clients and their ecosystems of employees and business partners. Rakesh will give further details on our various portfolios as we had done in the last earnings call. Loan origination was impacted due to the nationwide lockdown in April and May. The year-on-year loan growth declined and the loan book decreased sequentially, though month-wise trends indicate an improvement as the lockdown has been relaxed. In line with the approach we had articulated for the overseas business, the overall overseas branches portfolio and the non-India linked corporate portfolio declined both year-on-year and sequentially. Number 4, leveraging digital across our business. The growth of our franchise is driven to a significant extent by the digital platforms and technology-led solutions that we offer our customers. The ICICI Stack, our API banking portal, and our iMobile, InstaBiz and internet banking platforms, as well as bespoke solutions in place for corporate and institutional customers, provide seamless banking services digitally to our customers. During Q1 of 2021, an online food delivery platform used our Insta Wallet, offering to launch its digital wallet. We introduced a video KYC facility to onboard new savings accounts and personal loan customers and customers availing the Amazon Pay credit card. And we crossed 1 million users on our WhatsApp banking platform. We have seen significant growth and improvement in the market share in UPI transactions in the person-to-merchant or acquiring segment. Our digital trade solutions for corporates and SMEs have proved particularly relevant in the current environment. Number 5, protecting the balance sheet from potential risks. Our approach with respect to asset quality and provisioning has been 1, to construct the portfolio in a manner that does not deliver concentrated shocks. 2, to build an operating profit base that can absorb required provisions. And 3, to be proactive in provisioning with the objective of ensuring that the balance sheet is robust and the impact on earnings is recognized on a prudent basis. We continue to have a high provisioning coverage ratio on NPAs, with the PCR increasing further to 78.6% at June 30, 2020. As part of the regulatory measures following the outbreak of the pandemic, banks have been permitted to grant moratorium on loan repayments to borrowers. This is a policy and regulatory support to customers facing sudden cash flow depletion or potential future uncertainty. Our approach to the moratorium has been to permit the same for customers seeking it after due engagement. From about 30% of total loans being under moratorium at end April, the loan to customers where moratorium was effected for June repayments were about 17.5% of total loans at June 30, 2020. This trend is in line with our expectations and the gradual resumption of economic activities in June. Rakesh will provide additional comments later on the call. While moratorium trends would continue to evolve, we do not see this as a conclusive indicator of eventual outcomes. We monitor and analyze our portfolios with reference to a wide range of markers, including cash flows, deposit account data, income levels, leverage, sources of income, the industry in which they operate or are employed, and repayment behavior. We are confident that the approach we have adopted in building the portfolio, which I outlined earlier, would hold us in good stead. Our intention has been to cushion the balance sheet from the potential risk arising out of uncertainties around the trajectory of the pandemic and the pace and level of economic activity. We had made COVID-19 related provisions of 27.25 billion rupees in Q4 of 2020 against standard assets to further strengthen the balance sheet. As a prudent measure, the bank has made further COVID-19 related provisions of 55.50 billion rupees during Q1 of 2021, with the objective of completely cushioning the balance sheet from the impact of COVID-19. Number 6, maintaining a strong capital base. During the quarter, the bank monetized 1.5% and 4% stake respectively in its life and general insurance subsidiaries, further strengthening the balance sheet by about 30 billion rupees, which is reflected in the treasury income for the quarter. The capital position of the bank after making the further COVID-19 related provisions with the objective of completely cushioning the balance sheet from the impact of COVID-19 continued to be healthy with a CET1 ratio of 13.6% as of June 30, 2020, including the profits for the quarter. Over the medium term, we see favorable prospects for the Indian economy. We expect India's strong domestic consumption and investment drivers to continue to support healthy rates of growth in a normal environment. Given our strong deposit franchise and robust technology platforms, we will seek to benefit from the growing formalization of the economy and the rapid adoption of technology in banking. We seek to achieve profitable growth through identification and focus on pre-selected customer segments and micro segments and geographical micro markets that offer an opportunity for growth. We aim to provide all relevant deposit, credit, and fee-based products and services to these segments and in these markets, with digital delivery and decongested process as a key enabler. This approach has aided in growth in core operating profit in last year, even as NPL additions and related provisions have declined. We will continue to build our business on this basis. We have also created a significant provisioning buffer with the objective of protecting the balance sheet from potential risks. The Board of Directors of the bank has approved raising of equity capital of an amount up to 150 billion rupees, subject to regulatory, shareholders, and other approvals as may be required. The proposed capital raising, subject to necessary approvals and market conditions, is aimed at further strengthening our capital adequacy and improving our competitive positioning. With these opening remarks, I will now hand the call over to Rakesh.
Thank you, Sundeep. I will talk about the balance sheet growth, credit quality, P&L details, capital, performance of subsidiaries, and loan portfolio information. Starting with the balance sheet, the overall loan portfolio grew by 6.5% year-on-year as of June 30th. The domestic loan growth was 9.6% year-on-year, compared to 12.9% year-on-year as of March 31st, 2020. The domestic loan book declined by 1.2% sequentially. The retail portfolio grew by 11.3% year-on-year and declined by 0.8% sequentially. Within the retail portfolio, the mortgage loan portfolio grew by 9.3%, business banking by 33.7%, rural lending by 14.3%, and commercial vehicle and equipment loans by 6.6%, while the auto loan portfolio was flat year-on-year. Growth in the personal loan and credit card portfolio also reduced to 22% year-on-year. This portfolio was 587.09 billion rupees, or 9.3% of the overall loan book as of June 30th. The bank has extended the emergency credit line guarantee scheme to eligible MSME borrowers based on its credit assessment. Till July 22nd, we have sanctioned about 50 billion rupees to about 19,000 borrowers under the scheme, of which about 38 billion rupees has been spent. The SME business, comprising of borrowers having a turnover of less than 2.5 billion rupees, grew by 17.9% year-on-year to 208.57 billion rupees at 30th June. The growth of the performing domestic corporate portfolio was about 8%. During the quarter, we engaged with highly rated corporates to meet their short-term funding needs. We also used TLTRO funds during the quarter to lend through corporate bonds. The international loan portfolio declined by 21.1% year-on-year in rupee terms and 27.9% year-on-year in US dollar terms at June 30th. The international loan portfolio was 7.5% of the overall loan book at 30th June. We had mentioned in our previous quarter call that we would be progressively exiting our non-India linked exposures in a planned manner. Excluding exposures to banks and retail lending against deposits, the total corporate fund and non-fund outstanding of overseas branches, net of cash or bank or insurance bank lending, was $6.41 billion at 30th June compared to $7.48 billion at March 31st, 2020. The non-India linked corporate portfolio reduced by 40% year-on-year and 16% sequentially at June 30th. 63% of the outstanding at 30th June was to Indian corporates and their subsidiaries and joint ventures. 17% of the outstanding was to non-India companies with Indian or India-linked operations and activity. As we had stated on the last earnings call, the portfolio in this segment is generally well rated, and the Indian operations of these companies are target customers for the bank's deposit and transaction banking franchise, and the bank would continue to pursue risk-calibrated opportunities in this sector. 7% of the outstanding was to companies owned by NRIs PIOs. 13% of the outstanding was to the other non-India companies, which is less than 1% of the total portfolio of the bank. Coming to the funding side, we continue to focus on growing the daily average CASA balances. Daily average savings account deposits increased by 14% year-on-year, and average current account deposits increased by 19.8% year-on-year during the quarter. Total term deposits grew by 27.4% year-on-year, 4.6 trillion rupees at 30th June. Coming to credit quality, gross NPA additions during the quarter were 11.6 billion rupees. The gross NPA additions from the retail portfolio were 6.02 billion rupees. Of the corporate and SME gross NPA additions of 5.58 billion rupees, there were slippages of 1.71 billion rupees from corporate and SME borrowers rated BB and below at March 31st. The details of which are given on slide 25 of the investor presentation. The lower gross NPA additions reflect the asset classification standstill benefit on loans under moratorium. Recoveries and upgrades excluding write-offs were 7.57 billion rupees in the current quarter. There were recoveries and upgrades of 4.17 billion rupees from the retail portfolio and 3.40 billion rupees from the corporate portfolio. Gross NPAs written off during the quarter aggregated to 14.26 billion rupees. The bank did not sell any NPAs in this quarter. The total net non-performing assets were 86.75 billion rupees at 30th June compared to 101.14 billion rupees at March 31st. The gross NPA ratio at 30th June was 5.46% and the net NPA ratio was 1.23%. The provision coverage ratio excluding write-offs increased further to 78.6% at 30th June. The loans and non-fund based outstanding to borrowers rated BB and below, excluding NPAs, were 171.10 billion rupees at 30th June compared to 166.68 billion rupees at 31st March, of which the non-fund based outstanding to non-performing borrowers was 48.29 billion rupees at 30th June compared to 50.63 billion rupees at 31st March. The bank holds provisions of 13.98 billion rupees at 30th June against this non-fund based outstanding. The fund and non-fund based outstanding to borrowers under RBI resolution scheme was 14.6 billion rupees as of 30th June compared to 15.33 billion rupees at March 31st. The fund and non-fund outstanding to restructured borrowers was 1.68 billion rupees at 30th June, and the balance 106.53 billion rupees of fund-based and non-fund-based outstanding to borrowers rated BB and below includes 70.69 billion rupees related to cases with an outstanding greater than 1 billion rupees and 35.84 billion rupees related to cases with an outstanding of less than 1 billion rupees. Similar to the position at 31st March, other than 3 accounts, one each in the telecom, power and construction sector, the maximum single borrower outstanding in the BB and below portfolio was less than 6 billion rupees at 30th June. On slide 27 of the presentation, we have provided the movement in our BB and below portfolio during the quarter. The rating downgrades from investment grade categories, excluding fund-based outstanding to accounts that were also downgraded to NPA in the same period, were 14.73 billion rupees in Q1. The downgrades were granular in nature and spread across sectors. There were rating upgrades to the investment grade categories and a net decrease in outstanding of 8.6 billion rupees, and there was a reduction of 1.71 billion rupees due to slippage of some borrowers in the non-performing category and devolvement of non-fund-based outstanding to NPA. As Sandeep mentioned, our approach in recent years has been to make provisions upfront for potential losses and risks. For example, in the case of certain corporate NPL additions, we had made provisions substantially covering the outstanding amount in the quarter of NPL addition, as opposed to phasing out the same as permitted by applicable regulations. In Q4 last year, we had on a prudent basis made COVID-19 related provisions of 27.25 billion rupees. In this quarter, we have made additional COVID-19 related provisions of 55.5 billion rupees on a prudent basis with the objective of completely cushioning the balance sheet from the impact of COVID-19. We have taken into account the following: the lower rated, that is BB and below corporate and SME portfolio, the loans under moratorium in portfolios such as commercial vehicle loans and builder loans that were experiencing challenges even before the outbreak of the pandemic, loans under moratorium in certain other portfolios based on the nature of the product, collateral, borrower segment, and underlying economic activity. These provisions, we believe, are prudent in the context of uncertainties around the trajectory of the pandemic and the pace and sustenance of the improvement in economic activity. The total outstanding provisions at 30th June, excluding provisions for non-performing assets, considered in the computation of the provisioning coverage ratio, was 143.68 billion rupees, or 2.3% of loans. These include the COVID-19 related provisions held against the non-fund-based outstanding to NPAs, general provision on standard assets, and other standard asset provisions. Coming to P&L, net interest income increased by 19.9% year-on-year to 92.8 billion rupees. Interest on income tax refund was 0.24 billion rupees this quarter, compared to 1.84 billion rupees in Q1 of last year. The net interest margin was at 3.69% in this quarter, compared to 3.61% in Q1 last year and 3.87% in the Q4. The domestic NIM was 3.91% in this quarter, compared to 4.14% and 3.93% in Q1 of last year. International margins were at 0.33% in this quarter. The impact of interest on income tax refund and interest collections from NPAs was about 4 basis points at a similar level compared to Q4 of last year. The margins were lower in Q1 compared to the previous quarter, primarily due to the higher liquidity as deposit flows continue to be robust with fewer lending opportunities. Non-interest income, excluding treasury income, declined by 26.7% year-on-year to 23.8 billion rupees this quarter. Fee income declined by 30.8% year-on-year to 21.04 billion rupees this quarter due to lower borrowing and investment activity by customers and lower consumer spend in the lockdown period. Retail fee income also declined by 31.9% year-on-year and constituted about 70% of overall fees in the current quarter. Dividend from subsidiaries was 1.87 billion rupees this quarter, compared to 1.91 billion rupees in Q1 last year. The bank's operating expenses decreased by 4.7% year-on-year this quarter. The cost-to-income ratio, excluding gains from sale of stake in subsidiaries, was 37.5%, compared to 43.9% in Q4 and 43.7% in Q1 last year. The employee expenses increased by 10.9% year-on-year during the quarter. This increase in employee expenses reflects the increase in provisions on retirements and other employee benefits due to decline in yields this quarter. The bank had 96,682 employees at 30th June. Non-employee expenses decreased by 15.1% compared to Q1 of last year. The decrease in non-employee expenses was due to lower business volumes during the lockdown period and lower administrative and infrastructure-related expenses, partly offset by increase in technology-related expenses. We would expect business-related expenses to increase in future quarters as business volumes increase from the current levels. As a result of the above, the core operating profit increased by 14.8% to 70.14 billion rupees this quarter. Excluding the impact of higher interest income on income tax refund in the corresponding quarter last year, the core operating profit grew by 18% year-on-year. The treasury income was 37.63 billion rupees this quarter compared to 2.42 billion rupees in Q4. The gains of 30.36 billion rupees through sale of shares of ICICI Life and ICICI General are reflected in treasury gains for this quarter. Provisions other than the COVID-19 related provisions declined by 41.5% year-on-year, 20.44 billion rupees this quarter. Profit before tax increased by 14% to 31.83 billion rupees this quarter compared to 27.93 billion rupees in Q1 last year. Profit after tax increased by 36.2% to 25.99 billion rupees in Q1 compared to 19.08 billion rupees in Q1 last year. Coming to the capital position, Q1 ratio, including the profits for Q1, was 13.60% at 30th June compared to 13.39% at 31st March. Including profits for Q1, the Tier 1 ratio was 14.93% and total capital adequacy ratio was 16.32% at 30th June. Now I'll talk about the loan portfolio. The retail loans as a proportion of total loans were 64.1% at 30th June. Including the non-fund based outstanding, the share of the retail portfolio was 54.4% of the total portfolio at 30th June. As we had mentioned in our previous quarter's earnings call, the portfolio level built-up strategy for the retail loan book has been based on utilizing the existing customer database for sourcing in key retail asset products to cross-sell and upsell. We monitor the performance at a sub-segment level, and in view of the current operating environment, customer selection and underwriting norms have been reviewed and are being monitored constantly with necessary policy strengthening carried out at micro-market and sub-segment level. The disbursements across various retail products which had virtually stopped in the months of April and May have picked up in June. The disbursements across home and auto loans decreased by about 65% and personal loans and commercial business decreased by about 85% in this quarter compared to Q4. The incremental sourcing during Q1 was primarily to existing customers of the bank. Our mortgage portfolio was about 50% of the retail loan portfolio and about 32% of the total loan portfolio at 30th. Of the total mortgage portfolio, home loans comprise about 70%, top-up loans given to existing home loan customers based on their track record comprise 8%, office premises loans are about 5%, and loan against property comprises about 17%. About 70% of the mortgage customers have an existing liability relationship with the bank. The home loan portfolio is granular in nature with an average ticket size of about 3.5 million rupees. It is geographically well diversified and has been built on fundamental premises of cash flow assessment of the underlying borrower as well as meeting the legal and technical standards of the bank for the property being mortgaged. Average loan-to-value ratio of the home loan portfolio is about 65%. The loan against property portfolio has conservative loan-to-value ratios and lending is based on cash flows of business and individuals with limited reliance on the value of collateral. The valuation of the property is carried out internally. This average to loan-to-value ratio of the loan against property portfolio being 55%. The commercial business portfolio, including commercial vehicles, comprises 4% of the overall portfolio. With the gradual opening up of the economy, we have seen the utilization of commercial vehicles go up. Electronic toll collections through FASTag, where we are a market leader, fell to about 35% pre-COVID levels in the last week of April and 60% in May, before improving to above 80% in June and the first fortnight of July, mainly due to the demand for transportation of essential commodities. The utilization levels of commercial vehicles based on daily average distance covered have recovered to about 80% of the pre-COVID level in the first fortnight of July from a low of about 27% in April. The e-commerce sector in particular is seeing more than 100% logistics utilization compared to pre-COVID levels. The bank has a well-diversified commercial vehicle portfolio with the top 20 customers contributing to 3% of the book. Around 60% of our commercial vehicle portfolio comprises customers with long vintage. These customers are well seasoned and have witnessed multiple cycles in this business. Auto loans comprise 5% of the overall portfolio. Overall, the passenger car industry has started showing recovery, and we understand that wholesale billing has reached 50% of the average of the last fiscal 2020. Retail trends too have been promising in the month of June and are estimated to have reached 70 to 80% of inquiries and bookings seen in pre-COVID times. Auto loan disbursement volumes in June have reached around 65% of the pre-COVID levels. Here, about 87% of our auto loan portfolio comprises new vehicles and about 13% is used vehicles. About 50% of the new vehicle customers and 40% of the used vehicle customers have an existing relationship with the bank. Our personal loan and credit card portfolio is about 9% of the total loan portfolio. We have grown this portfolio from a low base primarily through cross-sell. About 70% of the personal loan and credit card portfolio is to the existing customer base, which provides liability information for credit assessment. Around 85% of the portfolio comprises salaried individuals. About 75% of the customers in the salaried segment are employed with well-rated corporates, including MNCs and government entities, and have stable income streams. The bank has in place conservative underwriting norms in terms of higher income cutoffs, lower leverage norms, and loan caps, among others, for the customers in the salaried segment. Our analysis of pre-moratorium bureau data suggests that the delinquencies in our unsecured retail portfolios were lower than both the industry average and the average for private sector banks. With respect to the moratorium, we see that adjusted for the usual attrition level, about 97% of our personal loan and credit card customers who have availed the moratorium continue to receive salary credits. Credit card spends have recovered to around 65% of pre-COVID levels in June, and we have observed a shift in consumer spending patterns, with spends in categories such as travel and restaurants being replaced by health and wellness, insurance, electronics, and e-commerce transactions. Our rural portfolio comprises 9% of the total portfolio. Within this, gold loans comprise 3% and Kisan credit cards comprise another 3%. Our overall microfinance loans are very small and negligible. The economic activity in the rural segment has been relatively less impacted by the pandemic. This, coupled with the satisfactory indicators Sandeep alluded to earlier, has led to healthy farm income and strong growth in the rural sector. The same has been witnessed in the increase in tractor sales. Disbursements in the rural portfolio have picked up and are close to pre-COVID levels. Gold loans, for example, grew by 32% year-on-year at 30th June. Our business banking portfolio accounts for 4% of the total portfolio. Average ticket size here is 10 to 15 million rupees. The portfolio is fully collateralized with about 85% of the portfolio having a collateral cover of more than 100%. The primary collateral is in the form of charge on current assets and is backed by self-occupied residential or commercial or industrial property. Our focus in this segment is on parameterized and program-based lending, digital channels, granularity, collateral, and robust monitoring. The portfolio is well diversified, spans multiple sectors and industries, and is well spread across geographically as well. Prior to the outbreak of COVID-19, the delinquency trends were low. With the gradual resumption of economic activities, credit commissions in the overdraft accounts of small business customers have nearly reached pre-COVID levels in the last week of June. Even before the outbreak of COVID-19, we were using an artificial intelligence-based pre-delinquency management engine, which uses more than 100 variables to create multiple micro-segments and accurately forecast almost 80% of our bounces for the right intervention at the right time. It was further sharpened during this quarter with additional markers such as zones under lockdown, industries directly impacted by COVID-19, and salary uploads, among others. We strengthened our collections team by reorganizing teams from sales, credit, operations, and customer service. We have been able to connect to over 400,000 customers on a daily basis using cloud telephony and voice calls to counsel them on the moratorium. We are using API-based integrations with large payment channels to ensure timely credit of the overdue amount. Our collection efficiencies have improved month on month, and June were about 80% of pre-COVID levels. The corporate, international, and SME portfolios were 35.9% of the total loans as of June 30th. Including non-fund based outstanding, the share of the corporate, international, and SME portfolio was 45.6% of the total portfolio at 30th June. SME portfolio comprising exposures to companies with a turnover of up to 2.5 billion rupees or 3% of total loans. Our focus in this portfolio is on granularity, collateral security, and more parameterized lending. Average ticket size of the incremental sanctions in this portfolio has reduced by about 50% over the past few years and is about 0.1 billion rupees now. The collateral cover has also improved significantly. Almost all the sanctions in financial year 2020 were through program-based lending. The customer sourcing has been largely through the internal channels of branches, wealth management, and private banking. We have seen positive trends for customers as the lockdown has been gradually lifted. Besides certain industry segments like gems and jewelry, retail trade, hospitality, and textiles, in certain higher impacted regions, the recovery of cash flows for customers in other industry segments and regions has been positive. Average credit commission for clients who have opted for moratorium is generally similar to those who have not opted for moratorium. As Sandeep mentioned earlier, in our corporate portfolio, we have emphasized reduction in concentration risk and improvement in the rating mix of risk. We believe that our approach of granular exposure and focus on higher rated corporate is standing us in good stead in this environment, and we will continue with this approach. Our approach is to provide a full suite of banking products to corporate clients and their ecosystems of employees and business partners. The builder portfolio, including construction finance, lease rental discounting, term loans, and working capital loans, was 218.48 billion rupees, or about 3% of our total loan portfolio. As mentioned in our previous call, our portfolio is granular in nature, with the larger exposures being to well-established builders. About 12% of our builder portfolio at 30th June was either rated BB and below internally or was classified as non-performing. The total outstanding to NBFCs and HFCs was 441.62 billion rupees at 30th June, compared to 397.55 billion rupees at 31st March, or about 5% of our total outstanding loans at 30th June. Our exposure is largely to well-rated entities with long vintage PSUs and entities owned by banks and well-established corporate groups. Sequential increase in the outstanding to NBFC and HFC during the quarter reflects this. The proportion of the NBFC and HFC portfolio internally rated BB and below or non-performing is about 1%. In line with the approach for the overseas business that we had articulated earlier, in our international business we focus on non-resident Indians for deposits, wealth, and remittance businesses. We are also focused on deepening relationships with Indian corporates, international markets, and multinational companies present in international as well as domestic markets for maximizing the India-linked trade, transaction banking, and lending opportunities. The non-India linked overseas corporate portfolio declined by about 16% or $460 million sequentially this quarter. RBI had permitted banks to grant moratorium on amounts falling due between March 1st and May 31st. During the month of May, RBI extended the period for which moratorium could be granted till 31st August. Various banks have adopted different approaches towards the grant of moratorium as well as disclosures regarding the same, including in the financial statements for the year ending March 31st, 2020. As per the latest financial stability report released by RBI, about 31% of loans of private sector banks were under moratorium at April 30th, 2020. As Sandeep mentioned, our approach to the moratorium has been to permit the same for customers seeking it after due engagement. From about 30% of total loans being under moratorium at end April for us, the loans to customers where moratorium was effective for June payment was about 17.5% of total loans at 30th June. This trend is in line with our expectations and the gradual resumption of economic activities in June. For the moratorium up to May 31, we had granted automatic moratorium on certain categories, with customers being able to opt out. For the moratorium from June 1, there is no opt-out category, other than for operational convenience reasons, some small ticket size portfolios like jewel loans, and all retail borrowers are required to opt in for the moratorium in each of the months of June, July, and August. About 90% of the portfolio under moratorium at end June comprises loans that were also under moratorium at end May. The percentage of loans under moratorium was higher for some portfolios, such as commercial vehicle loans and builder loans, which had been experiencing challenges even prior to the outbreak of COVID-19. Apart from the above, there is no major difference in moratorium levels in the key portfolios, and hence the mix of moratorium loans would largely reflect the overall portfolio mix. There would be a set of customers who availed moratorium prior to end May and have not availed the moratorium from June, so so far but have overdue. We are engaging with these customers, and should they also come under moratorium based on the pool of such loans, overall moratorium level may increase by up to a couple of percentage points later. Coming to subsidiaries, the details of the financial performance of subsidiaries is covered in slides 37 to 38 and 59 to 64 in the investor presentation. Value of new business of ICICI Life was 2.01 billion rupees in Q1 compared to 3.09 billion rupees in Q1 of last year. The new business margin increased from 21.7% in fiscal 2020 to 24.4% in Q1. The protection-based annualized premium equivalent remains stable year on year at 2.14 billion rupees and accounted for 26% of the total annualized premium equivalent in Q1. The new business premium was 14.99 billion rupees in Q1. Gross direct premium income of ICICI General declined by 5.3% year on year, 33.02 billion rupees in Q1 compared to 34.87 billion rupees in Q1 last year. The combined ratio was 99.7% in Q1 compared to 100.4% in Q1 of last year. Profit after tax grew by 28.5% YOY, 3.98 billion rupees in Q1 from 3.1 billion rupees in Q1 of 2020. The profit after tax of ICICI AMC was 2.57 billion rupees in the current quarter compared to 2.19 billion rupees in Q1 of last year. The profit after tax of ICICI Securities on a consolidated basis was 1.93 billion rupees in the current quarter compared to 1.14 billion rupees in Q1 of last year. ICICI Bank Canada had a profit after tax of 4.8 million Canadian dollars the current quarter compared to a net loss of 7.5 million Canadian dollars in Q4 and profit of 11.8 million Canadian dollars in Q1 last year. ICICI Bank UK had a net profit of $5 million this quarter compared to a net loss of $6.8 million in Q4 and a net profit of $10.1 million in Q1 last year. As mentioned in our earlier calls, the focus for the overseas subsidiaries is similar to that for the branches, primarily around NRI and India-related opportunities. The non-India corporate portfolio of the subsidiaries has reduced over the last 1 year, and during the quarter they are working on a further planned reduction going forward. ICICI Home Finance had a profit after tax of 0.01 billion rupees in the current quarter compared to a profit after tax of 0.64 billion rupees in Q4 and a loss of 0.06 billion rupees in Q1 last year. The profit was higher in Q4 due to gains from sell down of loans. The consolidated profit after tax was 31.18 billion rupees in Q1 compared to 12.51 billion rupees in Q4 of last year and 25.14 billion rupees in Q1 of last year. With this, we conclude our opening remarks and will be happy.
Sir, we are not able to hear you.
Hello? Yes.
Just a moment, sir. Participants will disconnect the line for the management speakers and call them again. Request you to all to please stay connected. Sorry for the delay, participants. We have the line now reconnected for the management speakers. We will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and one on the touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and 2. Participants are requested to use handset while asking questions. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the queue assembles. First question is from the line of Mahrukh Adajania from Elara. Please go ahead.
Hi. I just had two questions. Firstly, on the moratorium, of the moratorium 1 customers who have not shifted to moratorium 2, how many of them are overdue? You had mentioned that they are, but could you give a proportion? Like some banks have said that 70% of moratorium 1 have paid. So any rough range that you could give?
Mahrukh, when I said that, we think that the moratorium percentage could go up by up to a couple of percentage points. That is a part of portfolio of customers who had taken moratorium 1 and have not opted for moratorium 2, but would not have made the payment for the month of June. And as we speak, we would be engaging with them in terms of their plan for the payment. So that number of 17.5% could go up by another couple of percentage points.
Okay, so just a couple of percentage points.
Yeah, that is what the expectation is. Yeah.
Okay. And the other thing is, I wanted to know about your drawdown policy, provisioning drawdown policy. As in that you have mentioned that your COVID provisions are against some BBs that were in trouble pre-COVID, and then some other segments who've taken moratorium. So what will be your drawdown policy? As in that as and when these accounts slip, you will draw down, right? You will not make fresh provisions. Is that the right way to look at it?
Yeah, Mahrukh, these provisions have been taken as a contingency provision. I like you said, I broadly outlined, the portfolios that we have taken into consideration while, making this provision. So, as we see, slippages happening from this portfolio, the provisions would be drawn down, in that sense. Of course, I must add that the provision that we took in March quarter, 27.25 billion rupees, we could have drawn down on that as well during the current quarter because, many of those customers would have made payments during the quarter. But, our plan is to, let the moratorium period get over and then reassess the provisions, instead of doing it in the interim.
Got it. But after the moratorium gets over, you will draw down, right? You will not keep that as a buffer. That's my question.
So the intention of these provisions, is to be utilized for the impact that, could come in from COVID-19. So, yes, we would utilize the provisions.
And they are earmarked against specific pools of assets?
Against portfolios, it's not, against individual loans. It's like a contingency provision, so that would not be against specific loans per se.
Okay, thanks. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. The next question is on the line of Rahul from Goldman Sachs. Please go ahead.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Just 2-3 questions again on moratorium to start with. So Rakesh, you said a couple of percent could further go up because some of the customers in Morat 1 are still in the overdue categories. So the customers who started paying, so they've paid the full June installment that was due, or that's a part collection? How do you classify those customers out of moratorium?
The moratorium, Rahul, the moratorium is if a customer has taken moratorium, he was not required to make payments, from March to May for the moratorium 1. From June, the normal, billing would have started for the customers who have not opted for moratorium 2. So, there will be a set of customers who would have paid their, installments, for the month of June, and not opted for moratorium 2, and there will be a set of customers who would have not paid yet, and this is the set of customers we are engaging with, and because of that we do expect that the 17.5% number can go up by another couple of percentage points.
So again, so just to clarify, so this collection of EMI would be 100% of the billed amount, or it could be like a lower number also? Just wanted to clarify.
Typically, it will be full EMI gets paid by the customer.
Got it. Got it. The second question was, you talked about, Rakesh, about certain portfolios like CVs and builder loans, facing the stress. So is it possible to get some more color of this 17.5% number? Can you throw some light on what could be the mix between secured and unsecured? Or individual portfolios like salaried versus self-employed, what could those cuts look like?
Generically, Rahul, we believe that customers, of course, have also got impacted, by the pandemic. But there are a set of customers who have taken it as an additional buffer as well. So it is a mix of both factors which is there. So generically, what we have found is that the moratorium percentages across portfolios is not very divergent. The reason we called out commercial vehicle and the builder loans, and maybe you can add dealer funding to that portfolio as well. These 2 or 3 segments are where the moratorium percentages would be much higher than the average of 17.5% that we have seen. For the other portfolios, it will be in that region. So like in April we had said around 30%. This time one can say around 18-20% will be the moratorium portfolio across various portfolios. For these commercial vehicle and builder loans, it is a higher percentage.
Got it. Just one more question on the provisions that you've made, which is 7.5% of the moratorium book. So what is the policy now going on a go-forward basis? Do you plan to add some more contingent provisions in the next quarter, or you think 7.5 is good enough, taking into account the PDs and the LGDs also?
So I think like we said, I think the objective here was to completely cushion the balance sheet against the possible impact from COVID-19. So we have taken this provision. Going forward, we'll of course have to look at how things evolve from here. Assuming a base case, we have made the entire provision that we would have wanted to make in that sense from a contingency point of view. I think from September quarter and of course December and March quarter, once the moratorium gets over, in any case one will start seeing the actual payment collections and delinquency numbers coming up.
Great. Thanks a lot, Rakesh. That was helpful. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. The next question is from the line of Krishna Kumar from Sundaram Mutual Fund. Please go ahead.
Hi, good evening and congrats on a set of good performance in tough times. From all that you have done in terms of provisioning, credit costs and outlook, but we just want to understand, why do you want to raise more capital at this juncture, given your fairly strong capital position at this point in time?
No, I think for the capital raising that we have announced, and of course we are in the process of seeking shareholder approval for the raising. So of course it is from the point of view of strengthening our capital adequacy further, and from the point of view of the competitive positioning as well. If you look at the overall landscape which is there, so that is the objective which is there behind the capital raising.
Okay. And
we see growth opportunities to be there from a medium term perspective for the banking system, in particular the private banks, and we would want to be competitively placed to capitalize on that opportunity.
Sure. And could you guide a little bit in terms of your thoughts across various loan portfolios in terms of growth for this year, given the way that we are opening up? Where do you see you focusing upon in terms of fresh lending, etc.? We do see some peers have gone ahead with a lot of corporate lending. So how are we thinking about the rest of the year in terms of loan growth?
So I think from an overall perspective, as we have said earlier, we don't have any specific loan growth target. So we will look at the opportunities, the risk and the return, and then kind of look at the deployment of funds that we have. If you look at across the portfolios on the corporate side, indeed there is some more opportunity to lend, but a lot of it is at very fine pricing, and if it is for longer terms, a longer maturity, then we are not sure whether at the current cost one would want to do it. But we are very happy to do short term lending there, so that's something that we'll continue to explore. On the retail side, like we said, April and May was virtually no business. I think from the month of June we have started to see a pickup happening, and we expect gradually the numbers to increase through the rest of the year. Rural, of course, has held up pretty well during this period, and we expect that to be running at normal levels through the year. Again, so it will be a very, very focused thing from a wherever we are comfortable with the underlying credit and the returns are appropriate, we are happy to lend. But at the same vein, just because we have surplus liquidity, we would not be in any significant hurry to deploy the funds, because the negative carry of liquidity is not too much for us to worry and kind of start lending in a big way. So it will be a balance that we will do based on the risk return opportunities that we see.
Sure. Thank you, sir. I'll get back into the queue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we take the next question, we would like to request the participants to restrict their questions to 2 per participant. Time permitting, you may return to the queue for your follow-up questions. The next question is from the line of Parth Gutka from Macquarie. Please go ahead.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, hi. This is Nishant from Macquarie. So I had a couple of questions around your credit card business. So if I look at the industry level data, so your market share of spends is roughly around 300 or 400 basis points lower than your market share of cards outstanding. So could you perhaps explain why this is? Is this to do something with a lower share of corporate spends in your mix, or could you perhaps quantify what is your 30-day active card number? So that's question 1. Question 2 would be around Amazon Pay co-branded card. So the terms of the card are fairly onerous. So could you probably explain some thoughts around that card, why such a high cashback and also origination fee, and just the thoughts around this card portfolio, how much of your cards today are being sourced from Amazon? And the final question is on the mix of internal versus external sourcing. If you could quantify that for your unsecured portfolio or your card portfolio in specific, that will be helpful. Thanks.
So generically, the way we are constructing the card portfolio, so as you know, there are 2 ends of the spectrum on the card portfolio. You can have pure transactors, or you can have people who will revolve. And we have to balance both, because if we don't balance both, then we'll always have a problem in cards, one either on profitability or on the loan losses. So that is one. Second is what has been our approach in building up the card. You can bump up the spends, as you yourself actually have answered. We can bump up the spends by having a mix of very large commercial and then individual and person volume. Now on the commercial part, as you know, while volumes will come, it is unlikely that you'll make any money out of it, or if at all you'll make very, very tiny money out of it. And in our bank we are quite focused on 2 things. One is card is an integral part of a portfolio, a personal banking portfolio, because it is for us one of the very few products which has high frequency usage. And so from a brand perspective, it is a very, very important thing, both credit cards as well as debit cards, which is not true when you use it for commercial cards. Although we have a commercial card portfolio, as Rakesh had alluded earlier, and before that Sandeep had alluded earlier, we are quite focused that things should make money for us, and it should be fair to the customer, but it should also be fair to the bank. Now coming to Amazon, and most of it is now fully internally to our internal customers, and the whole affluence bit is actually only one. We get customers from the liability side, we get well-profiled customers on the liability side, we create pre-approved base, and then we go out and then give them and cross-sell other products, including cards. Coming back to Amazon, I think it is a fantastic product. The pickup of Amazon has been very, very good. And everybody who is on the call, I would request all of you to pick up the Amazon card. I think you'll really like it. Whether it is 5% or 3% or whatever it is, certainly it is very beneficial to all of you. And let me also assure you, it is quite beneficial to the bank as well. Because once you become a primary card, it is not that you are spending all of your life in Amazon. It's just a weighted average of 5% Amazon, but also other non-Amazon. There are very, very few people who just only use it for Amazon and use some other cards for non-Amazon. So slowly it becomes a primary card, and then you start to make money if they start revolving a little bit on that. Our approach to credit card is to, increase high quality cards in force, ensure that there is activation, and ensure that we have lesser chronic revolvers on the card, but we have more episodic revolvers in the card. For example, one of the reasons why people use our card is because if you are getting a 10% discount, but you don't have the cash today, your revolve rates are low compared to the 10% that you get. So for a 1 month, it is a very, very good, instrument of getting your discount, but at a very reasonable rate. So that's how the card movement is. And if you see our spend rate, or if you look at a revolver rate, it is among the better quality, direction. And, from our cards perspective, it is a certainly which we are driving, which is moving up. And what we have done on the cards, as against physical, where we are present, but post-COVID and even before that, we have started to move on digital cards. As you know, most of our cards now, you can instantly have a digital card instantly issued. And so you don't have to wait for a physical card to reach you. And you can start using it on e-com platforms. And as you know now, it is the e-com platforms, cards digitally is getting used much more than the physical side. So from our perspective, just strategically, more digital, push towards more primary, push towards more primary accounts and making it a primary card, ensuring that there is a very good mix of transactors and revolvers. And when there are transactors, making sure that you have got 360 degree of the customers. When it is revolver, ensuring that there are not too many chronic revolvers, because at cards with that revolve rate, chronic revolvers, they don't last very long. And ensuring that our OPEX are low, because as you know, credit card is a high OPEX business as well. So making the OPEX low, and you make OPEX low by two things. One is reducing the cost of acquisition, which is through your own, customer base, and then making sure that the overall operating expenses of administering the card, gets better because of decongestion. And so when we look at, because we know our numbers and we know, one of the, card companies are listed. When we look at it vis-a-vis them, we are quite sort of favorably poised, on the cards portfolio.
Fair. That's a very comprehensive answer. Thanks. Just one small thing. Could you quantify what is your 30-day active card rate? Like what percentage of your cards are active on a 30-day basis?
We have not disclosed it, so I'll not be able to quantify. But I'll urge all of you to take the Amazon card. It's really very good.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Next question is from the line of Manish Karwa from Axis Capital. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for the opportunity. So I just want to ask on the cost to income. Now, this quarter, obviously, the costs have declined sharply. Now, how much of this cost decline will be structural, and how much do you think it will come back once the growth starts picking up?
So, like I said, Manish, I think a lot of the cost is business linked. The retail, sourcing costs which are there, the cost, the advertisement, sales, promotion, those expenses have been much lower, this quarter in line with the lower business opportunities. So a lot of those costs will indeed, bounce back as we start, seeing the business, moving up. Of course, we also have got a fair bit of benefit from, lower travel costs, printing and stationery, costs, some of the rental that we have been able to renegotiate, for this period. So some of those elements are also there. Of course, we continue to spend on technology, so that is a cost which is still, increasing at a reasonable, level. You saw our employee expenses. I think a large part of the increase which you are seeing in the employee expenses is coming from the retirement provisions, itself. Otherwise, the increase should be, clearly be lower than, what we saw for the quarter. So it is a mixed bag, but, a lot of the expenses will indeed, come back with the business going up, and, that will also reflect, on the fee revenues, because fee revenues have also, come down meaningfully in this quarter.
So Rakesh, I just want to sort of add on to what you are saying. See, our philosophy on the cost side has been to allocate the cost in such a way so that the good quality cost, which is an investment, which is coming in an OPEX way, goes towards generating our PPOP, that is, operating profit, pre-provisioning operating profit. And the other part of cost, which doesn't have a direct linkage with the operating profit, we try and, manage those costs very, very, aggressively and efficiently. So that, while actually we don't run with a cost income target or an absolute cost, but what we certainly internally run with is to ensure that every rupee that is spent, where do you get the returns from, and whether it is positively correlated with the business that you get. And, if I were to give you an example, from health, it is like a bad cholesterol and good cholesterol. So actually all costs are not bad costs. There are good costs. And we really think that some of the costs will bounce back as the market, comes back to normalcy. And we would certainly want that cost to come back when the market remains. While we will, using this opportunity that is there in the environment, would certainly cut costs which doesn't have either a direct linkage, or because of the shift in customer demands, or because of the shift in consumer behavior. Those costs are no longer, valid or no longer required. So we would try to take out costs from there, and reinvest. But, we would not want to, put cap on what is the cost, but we will certainly want to be accountable to ourselves to ensure that every rupee that we spend, we get returns on that.
Sure. And the another question would be on investment. Now, obviously, this quarter we have seen a very sharp jump in investment, both GSECs and other investments. Quite likely because of a very decent jump in deposits as well. But what is the nature of these investments, especially the non-GSEC related investment, and is it longer duration investments that we are doing? Can you just throw some light on that?
If you look at the investment money, the large part of increase actually has come on the SLR book itself. If you look at the numbers between, if you're comparing from March to June, the increase there is about 37,000 crore of increases in the SLR book itself. The rest of the increase that is there is one of course is that we had participated in TLTRO. And we have invested in some of the corporate bonds, but there I think from a credit point of view we are very comfortable, I would say, on that book. Otherwise nothing much in terms of so even if there is any long duration, that will be AAA AA. Otherwise those will be shorter duration, and rating wise very comfortable. This reflects one, of course, the TLTRO, and the other is the surplus liquidity, which clearly, we had during this quarter, and, we will have in this September quarter as well.
Okay. And Rakesh, just a last small one. On the morat number of about 17%, 16%, 70% that we have, is there a wide dispersion between a corporate segment versus a retail versus a SME segment? I think it's pretty obvious to assume that the SME and retail would be higher than corporate, but is it significantly different one versus the other?
So the number is 17.5% for us. And like I said, I think if you're looking at the, significant difference that is there in commercial vehicle portfolio, which we report as part of retail, the builder loans, the CRFG portfolio, there it is much higher than 17.5%. And dealer funding, would again be, much higher than, 17%. The rest of it is, is reasonably, at a similar level across the portfolios.
Rakesh, if I may add to what you are saying, the way we look at, moratorium is that if you look at parts of the portfolio, they, in an equivalent format, because, such is the time, that they already had comorbidity. So actually, if you look at a commercial vehicle, or if you look at builder portfolio, it is not a new stress that has suddenly, come onto the market. They already had comorbidity. And so naturally, the moratorium there would be higher. Now for the rest of the portfolio, which was performing quite well, it has two components. Morat will have two components. One is the stress component, and the other one will be a liquidity insurance component. And when we look at all the data, and Rakesh actually expanded in every portfolio, and he gave in great detail. He gave data on those. When we look at this, it certainly is that a very very large proportion of them, are using it for liquidity insurance. And which is why I think as the economy resumed, we saw that in almost all places, Morat 2.0 is much lower, statistically lower than Morat 1.0. So it is a function of cash flows. We also see credit submissions, in our even the BLG book or the smaller SME book, etc., that the credit submissions are increasing, and we are tracking it very closely. At the end of it, all of us are actually, focused not so much on moratorium, but we are trying to have a fix on what is the portfolio at risk and what will be the eventual credit losses. Actually, I'm sure all of us are focused on that. Morat is an intermediate number that, for want of any other number, we have started to focus, because with Morat there now we cannot track NPL. So what is the proxy for that? So Morat has suddenly come in vogue and become a proxy for that. So I just wanted to give you some comfort that when we look at our portfolio and portfolio at risk, certainly things are rapidly improving. In July, I must also add that because of localized lockdown, it had started to taper a little bit in those geographies, but rest of the geographies it has moved. If you look at our FASTag data, etc., which is a very very real proxy for commercial vehicle movement, there are many states which is higher than pre-COVID levels. There are most parts of rural is higher than pre-COVID levels. So it certainly it looks like that if demand comes back. Of course, there are certain sectors where it is a factor of two things: how much will demand come back and how quickly will the demand come back. That will actually decide, and how leveraged is that sector. Actually, these three variables will finally decide the portfolio at risk. In many of them, our exposure itself is very very small, and in many places where this is moving, where demand has come back and it is moving up, we certainly see a corresponding increase in cash flows and credit submissions and deposit balances, etc. And so so I understand this whole issues, and we also track. It's not that we don't track Morat, but we certainly track more. We try to assess what is the portfolio at risk, what is the stress, and what is the leverage, and what is the underlying resilience of our consumer, how much reserves do they have, and so on and so forth. And which is why Rakesh has really given out a lot of details on each of the individual portfolios.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you so much, Sunny.
Thanks, Sunny.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Saurabh Kumar from JP Morgan. Please go ahead. Saurabh, your line has been unmuted. You may go ahead with your question.
Sir, two questions. One is essentially how will the growth on deposits, essentially current accounts and savings accounts, be on a daily average basis, on a quarter-on-quarter basis? And the second is essentially on the corporate advances. The other private sector banks which have reported seem to have grown at a faster rate. And so is this just conservatism or what do you think is driving that? Thank you, sir.
Yeah, on the CASA, while I talked about the YOY growth numbers compared to Q4, as well, the growth has been, quite healthy, both on, savings and, current size. The overall increase in daily average balance for CASA was about 19,000 crore in Q1 compared to Q4. And, within that, savings would have been close to 15,000 crore, current account around 3,000 crore, kind of a number, which was there. So the trend has been, positive in that sense. On the corporate portfolio, I think, I don't think it is from a, credit risk point of view that, there is any, averseness which is there. As I said, we are happy to do more of, shorter term, lending, and it's a function of the return, that we expect. versus, we would of course not want to do, very long-term lending, even if, it is very high-rated, corporates, because the pricing right now, would not be appropriate from a long-term, lending perspective. So that is something. Otherwise, there is no other, difference in terms of our approach there. And going forward, maybe you could see, better numbers as well. But I would say that a lot of this corporate lending that you are seeing, and we have also done, it's just that we also had a fair bit of repayments and prepayments, which came in. A lot of this lending is actually akin to liquidity deployment, because these are, 3 months, 6 months, less than 12 months, kind of lending at pretty fine, pricing.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next question is from the line of Mahesh from Kotak Securities. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good evening. Just a couple of questions from my side. One, if you could, while you've kind of given a clarity that the international loan book would keep declining, if you could just give us a status update on if there has been any further developments on the situation on the ground. Have you kind of seen any fresh stress emerging? The second question is on the market side. You seem to be seeing very strong flow of deposits on the term side. Largely kind of now it's going into the investment book. Any thought process on how are you approaching this? And the third one is on the moratorium numbers. If you could just give us an update, does 17.5 represent customers who have not paid any installments for the last 4 quarters? Thanks. 4 months, sorry.
Yeah, Mahesh. So on the overseas book, I talked about the numbers, so you would have that in terms of how the portfolio has come declined. There is no real, incremental, specific worry compared to, where we were, when we spoke in May. Of course, in Q4, we had a couple of reasonably large, exposures which slipped into NPA, and that's something which was a miss on our part. We have, continued to be focused on, planned, exit from the non-India, portfolio, and that, continues to be the case, as we speak. And during the year, we would expect to see, reasonable amount of reduction in that portfolio, and we will be, looking at, all opportunities, whether it is, getting prepayments, or at the time of renewal, reducing the limits which are there, and, also looking at exiting through, sale of exposure. So we are looking at it in, from all perspective in terms of bringing down the portfolio. Like we mentioned earlier, it is not because of any specific worry that we have on the portfolio. It is more to do with the fact that, this is identified as being not core to our overseas business strategy, and we would not really want to spend our bandwidth, on this portfolio, and that's the reason we are looking at bringing down the portfolio.
Okay.
On the margin, Mahesh, what was the exact question in the sense that, of course, we are, seeing the liquidity surpluses to be pretty high, and even as we speak in July, that situation, continues, and the expectation is, next few months it will, continue. From our point of view, we have been reducing deposit rates, wherever possible. We have brought down the savings deposit rate also. Last quarter, we have reduced our retail term deposit rates, wholesale rates. So at some stage, I guess, the deposit, flows could also, come down. But otherwise, we will, live with, surplus liquidity and the impact it has on margin in the near term. And I think we said that in our last results call to say that our margin will be impacted by surplus liquidity, by, lack of, credit demand. So that is something which has reflected in the current quarter, numbers. Going forward, as and when we start seeing the loan growth picking up, is when the liquidity gets deployed, and margin should see more stability in that sense. And bulk of the decline that we have seen on the margin is coming from the surplus liquidity, because what is happening is that surplus liquidity we are able to deploy it at a very minimal margin, maybe 30, 40, 50 basis point. And it adds a humongous number to the denominator while contributing only 30 basis point. So overall the margin comes down. But if you for a moment strip it out, then in terms of the loan yields or other investment yields, we have been able to bring down our deposit costs also in line. So it is not that, from a perspective of the business spreads that has declined meaningfully. It is more of the surplus liquidity, which is adding to the denominator.
Correct. Perfect. That's true.
Yeah. And
on the moratorium, if you could just give us some clarity as to what you said the last time there was opt-out, right? So in the sense that customers had the option of paying, but it was given to the overall portfolio. If you could just kind of walk through what's happened, are these customers paying, how much have paid of your loan book, which is currently at 17.5%? How much of them have not paid anything so far? Some color to the texture to the book that we have.
So Mahesh, it is like you have seen. I think all the banks have said that largely the moratorium to the customers who have taken this moratorium were from the customers who had taken moratorium 1. So in our case also that would be true. 90% of the customers who have taken moratorium 2 would have taken the moratorium 1. So to that extent, they have generally would have not been paying for the last 3 or 4 months. Some of them would have paid as well, but broadly it would be fair to assume that these are the Morat 1 customers continuing into Morat 2. There is a very small segment of the customers who had not taken moratorium 1 and have kind of said that they want a break on payment from June.
Just want to clarify this. It is not like the customers. It's like customers actually have no balances at this point of time. The position of the customer is quite weak right now. Or do you say, look, the customer is liquid, but he's uncertain about his future?
So it is a mix of both. The fact that there is uncertainty. For example, I talked about that there will be a fair number of salaried customers who have taken moratorium, but we find that based on the salary credits, that bulk of the customers adjusted for the usual attrition are getting their salary credits as well. So it is a mix which is there. So moratorium, like Anup kind of expanded earlier, it is if looked at as a single item, it is not a very good indicator of the quality of the credit per se, because it will have a mix of both the customers who have genuine challenge in repaying, but it will also have a good amount of customers who based on the uncertainty currently want to conserve on their cash and and liquidity. And that is the reason, for example, why what was at 30% of our portfolio on 30th April, and like we had said at that point of time, that number would have gone up a bit in May as well. It has now come down to 17.5%, and of course, like I said, it can add a couple of percentage point more, so say 20%. So that is what is reflecting the fact that it is not only because of some genuine payment challenge that customers have taken moratorium. So when we look at moratorium internally, we look at moratorium, the customer has taken moratorium. We look at many other factors in terms of bureau score, cash flows, collateral, and all of that, and then assess the credit position for the customer.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much. The next question is from the line of Jay from Batliwala and Karani Securities. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi sir. Good evening and thanks for the opportunity. Sir, if you can share what is the progress that we have made on the overdue loans which were there as of Feb end. So as per your annual report, the March 2020 balance was somewhere around 12,000 crores. What is the outstanding balance of these accounts?
So we have not, unfortunately disclosed that, separately. But, clearly there would be, there would have been a meaningful decline in that, particular amount of portfolio. Of course, since then, there would have been other customers who would have taken, would have got into overdue. But if you look at the static position of those customers, there would have been a meaningful decline on that. We have not disclosed the numbers separately, unfortunately.
Sure, sir. So that overdue number is not static, right? Because those people who were in SMA 0, you would keep on adding, right? Is that the understanding or no? Because I thought that pool was static because there is a DPD freeze there.
No, so the thing was that it was the customers who have taken moratorium 1.
Of course, for them it would become static, but then there would be a set of customers who have not taken moratorium 2. So from June onwards, that would again start adding. So
Sure.
it is a function. If the customer has taken moratorium 1 and 2, of course, then the past due status remains the same as it was.
Actually, when we speak to customers, this is Anu, when we speak to the customers, see, it is very clear that in these kind of, whenever there is uncertainty, liquidity is an important criteria. And so liquidity insurance then becomes an important criteria, and then it becomes the key in this market. And actually one should not be too much averse in providing liquidity provided one establishes viability. Because if there is liquidity, if there is viability and it is liquidity, it is a cash flow mismatch issue, and the customers will also come out well. And from a bank perspective, because full interest is charged, and so we don't lose anything on the NPV basis, it is not a very bad thing. So we should not look at it very negatively if a customer has taken a moratorium, because in uncertain times, liquidity is a very, very good strength. And we have to only look at viability and unviability of the situation. And if there is viability and it is only a matter of either a confidence issue, like in many cases, because we have seen even from the best of the best of the best corporates and best of the best profile of the customer, they have also taken moratorium. So, it is confidence level, it is liquidity level, it is behavioral level, but we certainly have to be mindful of the viability level. So if there is viability positive, cash flow mismatch, somebody takes a moratorium, fine. Just like it is about protection, it is about any insurance. Yeah, so this is really the issue, viability, non-viability. That is the real core issue, which is why we track, in addition to or not, many other factors which Rakesh alluded to earlier.
So in that sense, you also explained earlier, I think, that the PAR is much lower than the moratorium. So maybe can you provide some color on the PAR, or maybe the viable and non-viable portion? Is it significantly lower than moratorium, or how do you look at that number? Because of course it is, you as you said, you are more concerned on the viability and non-viability portion. But in terms of numbers, if you can throw any color on that.
Portfolio at risk. Moratorium, non-moratorium, NPA, gross, that is only a path to the final credit losses. So that is the approach. I'm saying, because in absence of many other things, moratorium has become a focal point. But what I am just trying to sort of communicate is that, the issue is PAR. What is the portfolio at risk? What are the factors that are portfolio? How are we monitoring our portfolio? Which is why, I think Rakesh this time decided to give a far more expansive disclosure than perhaps we have ever given. Because it is very important that all of us understand, how we think through these issues, how we are tackling these issues, what is our approach to these issues, and how do we look at portfolio, how will we look at provisioning, how do we look at contingency provisioning, how do we look at fundraising in this context, because these are two different things. Creating a moat on the balance sheet, creating a fortress type balance sheet is very different from the portfolio that you have. Plus the other thing is that we certainly expect that post this, certainly we will be among the stronger banks who will be able to then capture a much larger opportunity. At that point of time, we should have everything, we should be well positioned to capture that opportunity. By way of liability franchise, by way of very, very deep analytics of understanding the customer, by way of our underwriting and making it better and more agile, looking at micro markets, looking at deeper and deeper and deeper customer segments, and of course also supported by capital. So that is how we are positioning our bank overall. So we certainly think, and we all should pray and hope that this passes soon. But when we are on the other part of the tunnel, certainly we are confident, and we hope and pray that it passes soon, and we will emerge much stronger. And that's how we are working very hard to position our bank accordingly. Because the banking capacity in some ways will get restricted, given whatever is happening. So that is where our position is.
Sure, sir. And sir, just last question, sir. I mean, in your commentary, you mentioned that the reduction from 30% to 17.5% is as per your expectations. Just wanted to check, sir, if you can broadly share your expectation as to what would this book become by August end. I mean, just to understand, how are you looking into that? If you can share those expectations. Thanks.
No, we will not be able to make such forward-looking statements in terms of what that position will be at August 31st.
Sure, sir. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the last question for today. I now hand the conference over to the management for closing remarks. Over to you.
Thank you everyone for spending time this Saturday evening. Apologies for the question that we could not take. Anindya and I will be happy to take that subsequently. Stay safe and take care. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much, members of management. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of ICICI Bank, that concludes today's conference call. Thank you for joining us, and you may now disconnect your lines.